I'm John Law, this is Chasing Cars, and behind me is the Toyota C-HR GR Sport. Now this is an exciting brand tie-in because it's the first GR product that is not an out-and-out sports car. They've put the GR Sport moniker onto this car. Think of it like BMW M Sport, but at $41,500 here in Australia. It costs the same money as the range-topping C-HR Cobra, but with the spec levels of the GXL, apart from the extra addenda. So we're going to see in today's video if that's worth it. So if we consider the C-HR GR Sport, think of it as the automotive equivalent of like an Adidas tracksuit or something like that. But the question is this thing team issue or has someone bought this at a discount store on Parramatta Road? Well, that's what we're going to find out. So first of all, the C-HR is already quite an interesting looking vehicle. It's quite busy, and a couple of the extra styling tweaks that have been done to this GR Sport model, in my opinion, do make it look a little better. So we're going to start at the front, where the GR Sport C-HR wears this really aggressive front bumper. It's not actually that different from the standard car, but it is sort of broader and fatter, and it does a really good job of imitating the GR Yaris. Not to mention with this wacky shadow chrome detailing here, which I quite like, and of course the necessary GR Sport badging, which seems to appear everywhere, including on the brake calipers, which are these rude items finished in white with the GR Sport stickers, which make it look pretty sporty, and they're also hidden behind this set of 19-inch shadow chrome alloy wheels, which ties in the front end of the car pretty nicely. Now they are a big set of wheels, but I really like the design, but we're going to get into how they affect this car's driving in just a little bit. First, we're going to jump inside the interior and see even more GR Sport badging. So, jumping inside the C-HR GR Sport, and on the way in you'll probably notice a little bit of an incongruence. There's a hybrid badge just above a GR Sport badge. Now in the future we're probably going to see that more and more, but right now it just seems a little bit weird. And that sort of sets the tone for the rest of the car, because inside is pretty much the same as a regular C-HR, which is no bad thing. It's quite an interesting design. There's a little bit of soft touch up on the dashboard and up on the doors, and the general quality feels pretty high in here. There's only a couple of places where the hard scratchy plastic annoys, right down here next to my knee when I'm cornering, and the build quality is a touch flimsy, especially with this 8-inch infotainment system, but otherwise it's quite cool, oriented towards the driver, and it's quite a nice place to be. Now the wheel is the same, it's a leather wrapped item, and it's quite a nice small shape, same as in a regular C-HR. The only real differences in here are the seats, which are a sort of suede cloth material with leather accents and these natty little GR Sport silver emblems here, which is kind of cool. You got the usual C-HR stuff as well. You got your avocado seeds in the roof and your diamond patterns in the doors. It all feels pretty cool, if a little dark in here. The ambiance is definitely on the darker side. There's no way to lighten it up either with other leather colors available, but that's cool. Onto the technology, we've got an 8-inch touchscreen here with a reasonable resolution. It runs Toyota's own maps, which are a little bit low contrast for my liking. Of course, it's got wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You got shortcut buttons down the sides, you got a power volume button, and you've got your radio scroll button, which is good. Ahead of me is a set of analog gauges. In the hybrid variant, which this GR Sport is exclusively, you only get an Eco Charge power gauge. You don't get a rev gauge, but you can definitely hear it revving pretty loud with the CVT when the petrol motor kicks in. You've also got a TFT information screen in the center of those two, which gives you decent amounts of information. As for storage, the C-HR has a couple of pretty cool touches. So you've got this double height cup holder, which uses this little insert so that you don't lose the lids of your coffee cups when you put them in there. That's quite nice, though the cup holders are a little bit small. For a bottle like this, this is actually too large a diameter to fit in either of the cup holders, which is a little bit annoying. At least the door bins are big enough to fit a decently sized bottle. You've got a little sort of phone storage cradle here, but if you've got a plus sized smartphone, it's not going to work very well for you. And you've only got one USB port up front. So there's a couple of things we'd like to see taken care of, but really, for a 4-year-old car, the C-HR is aging pretty well here in the front, and it still feels nice and works pretty well. So let's see how practical the back seat of this small SUV is. And the back seat of the C-HR continues to be perhaps not the best place to be. It's a bit of a cocoon back here. You don't have much visibility out. The windows kick up really high. I'm 6'2", so I can actually still see out of them, but anyone shorter than me is going to struggle and is probably going to feel a little bit car sick in the back of here. Back to the space though, I've got really good headroom. I've got decent legroom behind my own driving position, and because the front seats are set so high, I've got huge amounts of toe room back here. So actually space on offer isn't too bad. The squab itself is fairly supportive. There's a little hump in the floor and the middle seat is a bit of a perch, but really this car's designed for 2 up the front and maybe a 3rd or a dog in the back seat. The use case most of the time, so it's not too bad. Amenities back here are also on the cheap side. So you've got really scratchy door plastics here, like aggressively scratchy. You've got a small cup holder here to fit something like a coffee cup, though it does specifically ban the use of coffee cups on the door handle here. You've got no ventilation or USB ports back here. You do at least have cargo nets behind each seat, but really the problem of the back seat of the C-HR comes back to visibility. Because the front seats are set so high, especially the passenger seat, which isn't height adjustable, no one's going to be able to see out above the front seats. So I think you get pretty car sick sitting back here for long periods of time, and that is a little bit unfortunate. But anyway, as I said, there's not going to be heaps of people in the back seat of this car all the time. So definitely jump in and test it and see if you can live with it. But let's see how practical the rear end of this thing is by checking out the boot. Now the back of the C-HR is, again, a pretty divisive place to look at it. Personally, I think it looks pretty good, but you can let me know down below what you think. The GR Sport does get a slightly different rear valence here, but otherwise it's much the same apart from the must-have GR Sport badge, because what would a car with a Sport name be without lots of badges? This is probably the coolest detail. You got a little piano black spoiler up here on the roof. And then we pop the boot, which is manually opened, which is usually not a big issue, but this one's actually quite a heavy boot to close. And under the lid, we've got 318 litres of cargo space, which is better than a Corolla, but still not class leading in this segment. Something like the Honda HR-V is definitely going to offer more space than the C-HR, but still, it's relatively practical. You've got a couple of tie-down hooks, some small curry hooks, and you've also got a space saver spare underneath the floor, which is good considering this car is a hybrid, which means the battery pack does eat into boot space a little bit. So let's close that boot. Remember to let me know what you think of the look of this car in the comments section down below. While you're down there, subscribe as well if you haven't already, because we're going to take the C-HR out on the road and see how it drives. So, what's the Toyota C-HR GR Sport like to drive? Do the GR Sport enhancements make this thing better? Is it worth the extra money? That's what we're going to talk about. But first, to the engines, because the GR Sport is actually only available with one engine here in Australia. Elsewhere, it might be a different story, but here you only get the choice of the 1.8 litre hybrid system, also found in the regular C-HR and the Toyota Corolla hybrid. It makes 90 kilowatts of power, and although Toyota don't quote a torque figure, it feels like under the bum it makes about 180 newton meters to 220, depending on the state of the battery charge and where it is in the rev range. Those are pretty decent outputs, and they're enough to motivate the C-HR along at a reasonable pace. It's not electrifying at all, but then nor is the 1.2 litre turbo either, which makes about 85 kilowatts and about 180 newton meters. All of those cars send the power to the front wheels. You can get an all-wheel drive option on the Cobra, but really the C-HR doesn't make any bones about being able to go off-road, so we reckon that the front wheel drive is all you need. Power is sent through a CVT automatic gearbox, which works fine. It's got rubber bandy kind of ratios. In this car, you don't get any manual mode at all. It's just drive or B, which is keeping charge in the battery mode. Best leave it in drive. You can adjust the drive modes through a very complex system in the menus, so there's no button. Would have been nice just to see on a GR Sport model having the ability to have a button just to press one and done and you've got a drive mode, but hey, that's where we are. That's how it is, at least for the moment. So, it's not sportier in the drivetrain at least. It feels just like a regular C-HR, which again, is no bad thing. And the fuel consumption shows pretty good. We've got 5 litres per 100 on our week of testing in this car, which is really close to the claimed figure. Toyota hybrids are nice like that. You can save a lot of fuel by driving them. And I mean, we're not driving particularly economically. You could easily get that down below 5 litres per 100. You also have the ability to lock this into EV mode for short drives around the city. So you're looking for a parking space or something like that after returning home, you can lock it into electric mode, and it feels just nice knowing that you're not burning any hydrocarbons. It's kind of a nice little thing. So yeah, the hybrid is a great engine, if not particularly sporty. And that's kind of the theme of this GR Sport. It's not particularly sporty. So the changes extend to the 19-inch wheels that we've already covered and to some lowering springs. So they're 15 millimeters lower than the standard car springs. And it does give it a nice squat stance on the road, but they're not any stiffer, or certainly not appreciably any stiffer. They feel about the same in terms of compression, and they don't really make this car drive any better, really noticeably. In fact, the whole package makes this car a little bit less playful, and the tires and the wheels with their greater amount of grip seem to make the balance tend slightly towards understeer, where the regular C-HR is actually quite happy to get up and boogie with a little bit of liftoff. The regular C-HR is a really fun car, and you can feel the funness in this chassis anyway. It's not quite as giggle-inducing as the regular car. It just feels not quite as sharp, which is a bit weird given that this is the sportier variant, and you know, Lexus F Sport and BMW M Sport and that sort of stuff. You actually have a sportier ride and handling setup, where the C-HR feels like it just sort of plows on a little bit. But I guess it's a small SUV, and the styling package may well be worth it. What's not so worth it is the ride trade-off with these 19-inch alloy wheels. It seemed fine at first when I first got in the car, until I realized that someone had set the pressures about 10% below the manufacturer's recommended rating. So we pumped them up to the 230 kilopascals recommended, and the ride got noticeably harsher. So if you're happy to drive around on slightly lower tire pressures and get slightly worse fuel economy, I guess you get more comfort. But really, the 19s do impact how comfortable the C-HR is, and I think that is a little bit of a shame. Now, the C-HR's NVH suppression is really good, and also because you can drive around in hybrid mode, it's often very quiet a lot of the time around the city. Up at speed, there is a little bit of a roar from the tyres, but it's not too bad. Safety features wise, it's based on the C-HR GXL, which means it gets all the same kit, which is a pretty good outfit for a car from 2017. So you get AEB with pedestrian detection, you don't get reversing AEB except on the range-topping Cobra. The biggest problem with this car is that you don't get front or rear parking sensors, which means you don't get rear cross traffic alert either that you get on the base model GXL. And the lack of front and rear parking sensors really is strange for a car that's going to spend a lot of its time in urban environments, at least in my book. It's not particularly difficult to park in reality, but it would be nice to know, and the camera works fine, it's just not quite as good as having the sensors. So overall, the GR Sport isn't a lot sportier than the regular C-HR, but it does look a lot better, at least in my opinion. You can let me know what you think down below. So, what are our opinions on the C-HR GR Sport? Well, for a start, it's great to see the GR Sport brand gathering momentum. There's going to be new models on the way coming, and this is a really cool little taste of what might be coming in the future. But unfortunately, despite the styling package looking fantastic, I think the rest of the package is just a little bit half-baked. It doesn't quite offer the difference in sportiness that a BMW M Sport does. At the moment, it still just feels a little bit too close to the regular C-HR range, which means I'd probably save my money and go for just the regular GXL hybrid. But you can let me know in the comments section down below what you do, whether you love the C-HR or hate it. And while you're down there, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe, the bell icon, and as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.